You're listening to the Patriot Nation Podcast.
All right, welcome into another edition of the Patriot Nation Podcast. As always, we are a member of the CLNS network of podcasts. Make sure you get on and subscribe to all of those fantastic shows, including the Patriots Press Pass, which I know a lot of you are already subscribed to. This, as always, your boy Pat Lane, here with my man Matt St. Jean. And Matt, we're through day two. It was a roller coaster day for you, Matt, a roller coaster of emotions for you today. But we're here, we've made it through, and now we get to talk about it. And that's going to be a lot of fun. I'm looking forward to this conversation quite a bit.
Yeah, we're going to have a fun pod tonight. At points tonight, it felt like this day was designed to torture me specifically, especially with that Celtics game added in there and an Ohio State player to the Patriots.
That was brutal.
The Patriots tweeting out OH from their account was a lot for me to handle.
That's rough.
But I will survive. I'm sensitive, but I'll push through it.
Yes.
But yeah, it's an interesting day. Obviously, we're going to get into the specifics of it. I do feel like the Patriots are better now than they were on Thursday morning. Mm-hmm. And for the first four picks of this draft, I think there's a real chance that all four players are Week 1 starters.
Well, I think really, to be very honest with you, I think that's really what it comes down to. What you're looking at and what you're looking for a team that, quite frankly, isn't good, right? Patriots aren't a good team. They weren't a good team last year. They added some good players. They did. They added some good players in the offseason. They're still not a great team. And so what do you want to do? You want to have that march towards competency, right? And how do you do that? You get guys that are going to be impact players right away. And so I felt that way about Will Campbell last night. I feel that way about TreVeyon Henderson. Now, TreVeyon Henderson's an interesting one because, you say day one starters. He may not be a day one starter. I think he will be a day one contributor. Running back's a weird one where it's like, he may not get the majority of the carries, but I do think that he'll be a day one contributor. And I'd be surprised if Kyle Williams wasn't getting snaps day one. And we all talked about Garrett Bradbury maybe having it, maybe not having it. Jared Wilson could very easily win that job, I think, day one. And so I think you have your franchise quarterback. You have the guy. He's already there. And so what you're trying to do now is just build everything up around him the best that you can. And I'm excited with what they're doing.
Yeah. Should we get into the top of the second round here? Set the table for New England's pick at 38?
Let's do it. So Elliot Wolf, doing a press conference right now, just said that they had trade offers at 38 and did not want to move down. And this is something that I talked about with a few people. I don't even know if we talked about it, to be honest with you, but I was talking to my buddy about this, and I just said, like, I get it. I want the Patriots to get value, and they did end up trading back. But the thing for me is that I also need them to get playmakers, to get the guys that they want, to get the guys that they need and they think are going to make an impact on this team. And so instead of trading back, they stuck at 38 and they picked TreVeyon Henderson. And for all the crap that I talked about Ashton Genty and not drafting a running back at number 4 overall, I feel like at 38, you can take that chance with a guy who is just explosive. He's a big play waiting to happen. He averaged over 7 yards a carry. He averaged, I think, over 8 yards a touch or something insane. I think it was like 7.5 yards per touch last year, which is just ridiculous. It's just insane that he could average that much. He's a big play waiting to happen. And he's not just a speed back. The thing about him is that, he's not just a speed guy. It's not just, give him to the ball and he's going to run fast. That's not it. He catches the ball really well out of the backfield. And he is, by all accounts, maybe the best pass blocking running back in the last 10 years. And so you don't draft a guy in the third round for his pass blocking ability. You don't do that, right? But if that's like the third thing down on the list for him, and he does it better than anyone else in the draft class, I feel pretty damn good about that. And so I'm very excited about this pick. I was surprised that Judkins went forward, if I'm being very honest with you, and I'm happy about it.
Yeah, I want to start. I think you got to talk about all these picks from multiple angles. We'll start talking about the player here. A lot to like about Trevion Henderson and what he can bring to the table for New England. An offense that has sorely needed players who can create big plays. Trevion Henderson does that and has done that since day one at Ohio State. His freshman year at Ohio State, he started 11 games and had 1,200 rushing yards. Second team All Big Ten that year, was a freshman All-American. Like, he came out of the gates hot, and he's a 3-down back. So like he can make big plays and he can stay on the field for you to keep creating those big plays, which I think is huge. He profiles as a guy who can be a do-it-all back in the NFL or who can work in a committee. Either way, I think that works for him. I think he's super useful. I think his floor is very, very high because of a lot of the early success, very good athlete, willing pass blocker, sees his very good vision, great app. Like he's fast and he's quick, which really shows up on the tape. So a lot to like there. The things I think you're concerned about with him as a player, one of them is going to be the amount of wear on the tires. 590 career carries already through 4 years in college. One of the reasons that you look at that, this is a guy who had 1,200 yards as a freshman at Ohio State. You might be wondering why he's coming out now in the second round after 4 years in college, after a performance like that. That's because he missed a lot of games between 2022 and 2023. He missed 8 games between those 2 seasons with injuries, and saw his production dip. And then came back this year, got back over 1,000 yards, still did not quite reach what he was able to do his freshman year. Part of that's because you got Judkins in the backfield, so when you have that two guys back there, he's not going to touch the ball as much. It's going to hurt his yardage. But yeah, so he had the injuries. Also, he did have a penalty after punching a guy during a play, which I don't care that much about. I think that actually might be a positive for Mike Vrabel to have that kind of attitude and that nasty. But I do think is notable. But I think when you look at a running back like this, a guy who already has injuries, and I believe all lower body injuries too, and with that many carries, there's definitely a concern of, is like this guy, should we like who he's going to be on his first contract? Are we still going to want him? Are we like, is this a guy we're even going to want to re-sign?
Right. And I listen, I think that's fair. I think it's fair criticism, right? And I think I also understand being in the position they were at 38, right? Could we have gone a different route, right? Could we have gone the pass rusher from BC? Could we have gone a wide receiver? Right? Could we have done some different things there? And I think the answer to that question is yes. I think you could have done a lot of different things at that spot. And I think that the second guessing is normal. And I think that that's something that, that's what we're here to do, right? Is second guess what they do, right? But if you look at the next pick after is Luther Burden the third, right? And we talked with Matt Waldman about Luther Burden, and he loves him, of course. But and then a few picks later, Mason Taylor goes. And then, Donovan, Easy. I'm not going to get it. So we'll just go with Donovan Easy from BC. Goes a few picks after that. And you start looking and saying, okay, could they have gone a different route? Could they have gone Nick Scorton, who went at 51? And so I think that those are players that I totally understand are there and we could have gone after. I also look at the spot and say, you have the young quarterback. You have the guy that's there. And we want to try our best to make his life as easy as possible. And so to do that, I think You build in this guy that is electric, and again can take it to the house. You see some of the carries and some of the receptions that he has, and just like he's just blowing by people. And I think it's something that they didn't have. They did not have a home run hitter in the backfield. I like Antonio Gibson quite a bit. He was a really good player for them last year, not a home run hitter. Ramondre Stevenson, not a home run hitter. He had a really bad year last year. And so, I think you're drafting him with the thought that he could end up being the number one guy. But even if he isn't, he's a guy that you put on the field and it's like, oh boy, like what are we going to do with this guy? And he's a problem with the ball in his hands, and he's a problem when he's blocking too, which is really cool.
Yeah. I think this is where I start to have a very hard time with this pick and why I gave it a D on Pat's pulpit, because like there were other prospects rated at or above the same spot that Henderson was by evaluators at more important positions for the Patriots. And the thing that stands out to me is pass rush. Patriots they had the worst pass rush in the NFL last year. You want to help a young quarterback. One way to do that, like make his life easier, is just to make sure the other team's not going to score as much. Give him better field position. Have a defense that's going to create turnovers for you. Pass rush helps with that. When you have two different pass rushers who are
yeah, you
ahead,
asked for it. I
love it. Bring it on. Bring it on. When you have two different pass rushers rated above TreVeyon Henderson, who are scheme fits, who address an immediate need for you at a position of higher value, I just have a very hard time with making this call. Clearly, they did not feel as strongly about those pass rushers as I do. So, hopefully they're right on that. Hopefully this is the right direction to go. But I just think that was something you needed. Keon White is someone we like, but who has not been able to put it together consistently through 2 years. He's had the flashes. There's things about him that we like. We don't know how good of a player he's actually going to end up being with good coaching. Harold Landry is clearly at the end of his career here.
Right.
Caleb Von Chasen is might be good type of guy, but and obviously if you get Barmore and Williams back, that helps your interior rush. But you need edge rush. You need that in the NFL. So I just really have a hard time passing on those guys in particular. I think you look at receiver like Luther Burden. I like Burden a lot. I think you talk about helping a young receiver, getting a wide receiver, or just helping a young quarterback. Getting a wide receiver is like the way to do that. I can understand passing on Burden given supposedly some of the concerns around him. It's just tough when it's a guy who's rated that highly, who's liked by a lot of people, who goes with the very next pick. And this is a story we've seen how many times in New England, Keenan Allen over Aaron Dobson, and the Tyquan Thornton stuff with George Pickens going later, and the Ladd McConkey stuff last year. All the stuff with N'Keal, you take N'Keal Harry and the next couple receivers are all good. This is something that has continuously happened in this area of the draft for the Patriots, and they could be in this position once again where you need a receiver. A receiver is one of the best prospects on the board. You take a different player, different position, and then that guy goes on to be good is like a nightmare that we have lived for a long time for this franchise. And if it happens again, that's going to be tough to swallow. And then the one other one I'll mention, because I want to just come on here and defend it, is Mason Taylor, because I'm a Mason Taylor guy. And, this is something Pat and I kind of talked about off air at one point, but the criticism of TreVeyon Henderson is that you have two NFL running backs on the roster who are adequate. These guys can play in the NFL. Henderson's going to be 1/3 of a committee when he steps on the field. What the actual way that's divided up, we don't know yet. But he's going to be 1/3 of a committee. He's going to be splitting snaps with probably two other guys out there. Mason Taylor, if you draft him, is probably doing the same thing. The reason to me that I think Mason Taylor would still be a better pick here, twofold. One, pass catchers are more valuable than running backs to me, so I put a higher premium there. Two, tight ends typically are hitting their prime 3 to 4 years into their career and are very good value to re-sign. So it doesn't bother me if Taylor's not going to be an impact player year one, because you're drafting him for what he can be years 3, 4, 5, and 6. Really, you're looking into the future.
Right.
Henderson is a guy who's going to be in committee year one, but he's probably going to be at his best years 2 and 3. So it's a shorter term bet, and the fact that Mason Taylor then goes, like, the fact that the Jets get Armand Membu and Mason Taylor just feels like, some kind of higher power here is openly mocking me. So
well, maybe that means they're both going to be busts because they play for the Jets now.
Look, I hope, man. Like, it's
well, and listen, I think your point is a fair point, right? And by the way, my dad sent me the it's as a Ruco, so appreciate that. Thank you. As Ruco from BC. Look, I get it, right? And I understand wanting the edge. What I will tell you, and the only pushback I will give you, what did they add to offense in the offseason? They added Garrett Bradbury and Stephon Diggs.
And Morgan Moses.
Right? And because they didn't have a right tackle. So they added Stephon Diggs, they added Morgan Moses, and they added Garrett Bradbury. Now they added a wide receiver who's coming off of an ACL injury, and they did
add Mac Hollins too, who might end up being a starter for them.
Sure, Mac Hollins. Okay, great.
It's nothing special, but they did add him.
Right. Okay. They didn't add. My point is that they didn't add a running back. Okay, that's my point. The running backs, we got a lot out of Gibson last year. I like what I saw out of Gibson last year. I thought he played really well. Ramondre had a down year for sure, like a real bad down year. And so if he's trending down, you're going to need a running back. And so, look, Kraft came out and said, we need a speed back. Vrabel came out and said, we need a speed back. Like, they said these things. And so we knew that was coming at some point. Now, Bajal Tutin was a guy that Phil Perry liked and I liked a lot, that I thought they could get in the 4th or 5th round, which he's still available after day 2, clearly going to be available in the 4th round. I think that was a guy they could have targeted at 106. But he's not as good as Travion Henderson. He's not close to as good as Travion Henderson. And so maybe he looked at it and said, we feel like this guy can be our guy day 1 right away starter. Plug him in and go. And so my only real pushback is that defensively, they added Harold Landry. They added Milton Williams. They added Caleb Von Chasen. Now, I don't think Caleb Von Chasen is going to be like an actual contributor, but he could do something. And I do also think that there are guys that are still available that they can go after. But when the board falls a certain way and you're looking at the players that are there, I think Henderson was probably very high on their board. And they looked at it and said, this is the guy that we want. This is the guy we've targeted. And look, again, as I mentioned, we're here to criticize. This is what we're here to do, right? We're here to second guess what they're doing. Because if we just blindly just say, oh, well, I trust in Mike Vrabel and Elliot Wolf and we're good, it doesn't matter. That's just not, what the hell good is that? Why does anyone listen to me if that's the case, right? And so we do have to question what they're doing, and we do have to ask if they made the right decision on that. I just feel like with Travion Henderson, I need explosive players on my offense.
Yeah, I don't.
And we had a serious lack of explosive players on the offense, like a huge lack, like zero. Like we had none.
Yeah.
Of it.
Well,
and now we have one.
This team has not had explosive players, offense or defense, which has been a real
Right.
issue for them. And it's like, I think what makes this conversation tough is I actually do really like Travion Henderson. He makes your team better. I think it's a good pick. I just don't like it in the context of the other things going on the team. Because I think if you're New England, like some of the other running backs, like in round 3, let me see where it was that he went. Caleb Johnson went at 83 to the Steelers.
Yeah.
In theory, if you're sticking at 77, you could have taken him there and gotten somebody who is 85% as good of a prospect as Travion Henderson, and gotten a borderline first round pass rusher to add to your edge. And
which is fair. Yeah.
I like that a lot more. I will say, RJ Harvey went a lot higher than I thought he was going to. I thought RJ Harvey was going to be available at like 106, and he went at 60. So that kind of threw a wrench in that for me, because I thought he was someone they can get later. But even still, guys on the board, Dylan Sampson has not been taken. Cam Scatterbo has not been taken. Damian Martinez has not been taken. I believe the Georgia running back, Trevor Etienne,
Yeah, he hasn't been taken either now.
he hasn't been taken. And I would much rather have, someone from that group of players at 106 and the pass rusher or a wide receiver or a tight end that they could have gotten at pick 38 in the grand scheme of things. So you're kind of like, I feel like evaluating this, I'm stuck in a weird place where I don't hate the actual player that was taken, but within the context of other moves that the team could have made, I really do not feel like they maximized their opportunity. And I think there's a real chance we're coming back next year into the draft being like, man, we really need pass rush. And it's
Yeah.
like, well, we could have addressed that last year, and
that's a fair point. It's a fair point, right? I will say there are still guys on the board. Jack Sawyer's not a guy I really want, but like Braden Swinson, Baron Sorrell, Kyle
Swinson's
Kennard.
Kennard actually is a very funny potential ad here because he was the guy who gave Will Campbell issues this past season. So that's a very funny potential player to add to your lineup. I just feel like there's a much bigger fall off with pass rushers when you get to this point. And
that's a fair point. And I think Joshua Farmer should be in play at 106.
I agree. And he's interior player, but definitely a pass like that. He doesn't help your edge guys, but I do think he helps your pass rush overall. He can kind of fill that Daniel Aquale type role on the team, be your third DT pass rusher, and hopefully develop into something.
Right. And that's kind of what I'm looking at least. And again, your point is a good point. It should, like, I don't want to say you're 100% wrong, but you're right in the fact that talking about the pick is challenging. And the reason why it is because you like the player. Trayvon Henderson's a good player. There's no denying that Trayvon Henderson is an electric player. Mm-hmm. There's also no denying that the Patriots don't have electric players on the roster anywhere. Right now, the one place they have an electric player is at quarterback and at cornerback. Those are the only spots that they have electric players right now. And so they have two of them. And who? And punter. Good point. That's a good point. Yes, can't leave him out. But that's it. That's all they got, right? And so, you look at it and say, okay, well, where do they add those electric players, right? Could I think Trayvon Henderson could be a guy like that? Could Azarugo be a guy? I think he could. But again, I think you're looking to build the offense around Drake May as well. You're looking to make your offense more explosive. And I see the vision where they're doing that. Now, is there a world where they look at it at the end of this year and they say, crap, we have no pass rush. We're dying for pass rush. We need another pass rusher. Yeah, I can see that. But I also think that every year good pass rushers come out. And so if they end up drafting a pass, you got to draft someone in the first round. I'd rather draft a pass rusher in the first round than a running back. So, that's kind of where I'm at with that. So, look, I think we could go back and forth about this all night. And I think that that's part of the fun of this is that everyone has a different take and different opinion on it. And my favorite part about it is that everyone has a different take and a different opinion on everyone. And so you're like, everyone looks at the same player and they say, oh, that guy's great. Oh, that guy sucks. Oh, that guy's great. So it's fun. Now, everyone believes that Henderson's a good running back. I didn't see one person say, nah, Henderson's overrated. He's no good. He stinks. I didn't see one person say that, right? And so I feel confident that they're getting a good player, but it's just the question was it the right pick in the right spot? And again, that's the question that only time will tell if that's correct or not.
Well, it's definitely not a reach. He's 40th by the consensus boards, and you're taking him at 38. So the value there, that part adds up. I definitely we always talk about it's never a bad problem to have too many good players, but if there's one position where that's kind of tough, running back's one of those. I wonder what you do at the end of what happens if we get to the end of the season and Ramondre Stevenson bounced back? One of the pluses with Ramondre Stevenson is his pass protection, his ability to be a 3-down back. All right, so you got two of these guys now. One of them you just use the top 50 pick on. The other guy is on a decently expensive contract for that type of running back. You really can't move on from him for the next 2 years. So, all right, we just used a ton of investments at a position where you're really only ever going to have one of them on the field at the same time.
Right.
Obviously, still a good problem to have because you got multiple good players you want to give the football, and running backs get injured. So it's not the end of the world, but think it's tough to have that problem and then also have no pass rush, and no clear wide receiver one, and no clear plan for the future at tight end when both of your guys are 31 and on contracts that expire soon. It just and we'll get into it with some of the later picks too, but in some ways the start of this draft feels a little bit like kind of what the Lions did a couple of years ago, where it's like, oh my God, what are the Lions doing? They got a linebacker and a running back and a safety and a tight end. But the problem with the Lions made those picks after they got Aiden Hutchinson, who's a top tier pass rusher, after they got Amon-Ra St. Brown and Jameson Williams to flesh out their receiving core, after they got Penei Sewell to be an elite tackle for the team. They already had the key pieces in place. Then they were able to add, pick specific types of players to fit in around them to build. And it's like, in some ways with the Patriots, that it feels like they just skipped right to that step without having some of the foundational players to build around.
Which is a fair point. And the question is are those pass rushers that you would have taken at 38, would they have developed into those true foundational pieces?
Yeah.
There's no way to know.
One, we will find out. And it's, the names to me that you're going to be looking at if you're a Patriots fan, it's Luther Burden, who goes to pick right after you, who has wide receiver one talent in the NFL. It's going to be Mason Taylor, who goes to your division rival at pick 42, who could be a really good pass catcher. Nick Scorton going at 51 to Carolina. So you'll see him this season because the Patriots play the Panthers. And then Ezraku, too, at 44 to the Cowboys, who you won't see him for another 2 years.
No, but
you
that's
play them. But it's, and the Bears you're not going to see for a couple of years, too. Actually, next season we'll play the Bears. So you'll see him pretty fast.
We played the Bears last year.
Yeah, because that was the low. That was the
that was the 17th game.
That was the extra NFC North game. So we get the NFC North next year, and that Bears game will be. Bears game is going to be in Chicago because the last one was the Mac Jones Bailey Zappi game on Monday Night Football. This will be the return.
God. Yep. Jesus.
So that's like those players to me are the ones I'm looking at, and if one of those guys ends up being really successful, even if Henderson's good, you're going to look at it and say, well, if these guys are equally good, you probably would have rather had the other one.
Right. Yeah, we'll see.
Yeah.
So, all right, let's get into our first ad break, and then we'll switch to our 69th pick. So, of course, this ad break is for Prize Picks. Prize Picks is the best place to turn your sports knowledge into cash. With millions of members, Prize Picks has made daily fantasy sports accessible to all. You just pick more or less on at least two players for a shot to win up to 2,000 times your cash. Run your game all season long on Prize Picks. Cash into the basketball playoffs with Prize Picks. Don't miss your last chance to add your favorite players from the court to your Prize Picks lineup, whether it's points, rebounds, assists, or all three. Take your pick of more or less for your shot to win up to 2,000 times your cash today. Again, one of the things I love about Prize Picks is that you can mix and match sports. So you can have your Celtics or your Magic or your Thunder or your Lakers going in the NBA playoffs. You can also have the NHL playoffs going at the same time. You can have the MLB, and you can combine all those guys into one lineup, which I love that as well. That's my favorite thing to do. So they also do take Venmo and MasterCard and Apple Pay. And so the deposits and the withdrawals are fast and quick and easy. All right. Now, every Tuesday, they have Taco Tuesday. There are players that are currently discounted on the boards every Tuesday. Bam. Every Tuesday you go in. Oh, players discounted. All right. Got it. Flex Friday. On every Friday, you can put together a lineup and you can choose it to be a flex play, and you can get that money back in the form of promotional dollars. So that's really what you want to do. So anyways, what are you going to do? Download the app Prize Picks. Put in the promo code CLNS. When you play your first $5 lineup, you will get $50 instantly. You do not have to win that lineup. You just have to play it. So again, download the app Prize Picks today. Put in the promo code CLNS, and you get $50 instantly when you play your first $5 lineup. Prize Picks, run your game. All right. So let's get into the Gronk pick. Pick 69. Nice. We are. Listen. Oh, Matt hated this pick too. And I can't. The Patriots won Kyle Williams. All right. And Kyle Williams for me is maybe the most slept on wide receiver prospect. Like, it's one of those guys that I just feel like everyone that talked about him, it's like they put on the film and they were like, why is this guy rated so low? I don't understand. And I feel like at the very end, he started shooting up draft boards at the very end. Almost like guys were like, he's not that good. And then they were like, oh, crap. No, he kind of is that good. And so, I really liked what I saw from him. And again, you're giving Drake May another weapon, a guy that separates easily, that gets open, that isn't just a gadget guy catching screen passes. He's actually going down the field and running routes. And I really like what he brings to the table. So Kyle Williams, number 69.
I am gonna. Let's start with talking about the player here. There's a lot to like about the skill set that Kyle Williams brings. He's quick. The first thing you notice when you watch him on tape is his change of direction ability. It takes him no effort at all to change gears, which is very impressive. And he's got very good high-end speed, too. He is a very athletic guy, and that really shows up, especially, you watch a highlight reel, you're really going to see that change of direction and athleticism taking over. He's a guy who had some really nice production for Washington State season, almost 1,200 yards receiving, 14 touchdowns. It's a guy who played inside and outside for them. I don't know if you would call him the X in that offense or we'd call him the flanker in that offense, but he played outside the numbers for them. And he's 5'10" and a half, 190 pounds. There's a little bit. To me is a guy who probably is a slot in the NFL. I think because that's tough. Like, he definitely can't be an X in the NFL. Because this is where I guess I just differ from others in my evaluation of Kyle Williams. I thought I thought his lack of size, that he's just 190 pounds, showed up on tape. His slight frame, I thought that really showed up with the physicality at points. I had really questioned his ability with his releases against press. It seemed like definitely at points they were sheltering him. I think he's really good after the catch. I question the schedule he played here. He's great after the catch, but the teams he played, these are the teams that Kyle Williams had at least 100 yards against. New Mexico, not a power conference team.
Mm-hmm.
Syracuse, that's a good one. At Boise State, that's a decent one. Not a power conference team, but that's a true road game. That's a good game. Portland State, FCS.
Right.
San Jose State, not a good team. And he's playing for Washington State, a team that's basically not in the conference right now. They have one conference game, and that's the conference, and that's the game against Oregon State. So he just didn't play a tough schedule. When they played Texas Tech, he had one catch, 21 yards. They played Washington in a rivalry game, power conference team that was not having their best year this year. 22 yards receiving. Games against Fresno State and Utah State, Wyoming, Hawaii. He's just having okay performances. It seems like he stacked his production against some really bad opponents, and you see that in his yards after the catch, I think. And that Syracuse game, I want to go back to that for a second. That's good to have that production. You know who else dominated Syracuse this year? Ricky White for UNLV, who I feel like is a very similar profile guy, a little bit bigger, also slight frame, just taller. Also a fast guy who wins with some quickness. Also a guy who has some issues with catch technique. Also a guy who's a little bit of an older prospect who was a late breakout. Kyle Williams separates against man coverage. And that's kind of number one. So I think he'll help you in the NFL. He might start day one because he's going to be better than the other guys at that. Beyond that, floor is incredibly low. Ceiling is probably a high quality wide receiver too in my eyes.
which I think at 69 you're okay with that. And that's
Yeah.
listen, your wide receiving core blows. It blows. Like you added Mac. Like we are sitting here on it's now April 26th. On April 26th, 2025, talking about Mac Hollins being a starter for the New England Patriots. And like Mac Hollins, love you, buddy. Love you. But like, Jesus Christ, if he's a starting receiver for the Patriots,
No,
that's bad. That's really bad. And like, we've gotten Tyquan Thornton sucked. See you later. He's out of town. Jalen Polk doesn't even know how to run a route. Doesn't know what a play is. Can't line up in the right spot. Right? Like, Javon Baker can't get on the field. I mean, they're signing guys off the street and putting them on there instead of Javon Baker. Like that's insane to me. So like maybe they take huge strides this year and they're much better than they were last year. But like we have a guy coming off an ACL who's over 30, and Matt Collins, and Pop Douglas, and Kayshon Boutte, who's a head case and has been talked about getting. Has been discussed in trade conversations already. It's been leaked that he might be getting traded. And like, that's what we have. That's our receiving core. And I guess Kendrick Bourne, throw him in there. Sure. Over the hill. Really didn't look good last year. Like, I know coming off the ACL, whatever. But like, the receiving core sucks. It's got no juice. It's got no excitement. It's got no speed. And so you add a guy that has legitimate speed. And I think here's the biggest thing. When is the last time the Patriots had a guy that can get open on man coverage?
No. And that's
Julian Edelman? Like, is he the last guy that can get open on man coverage? That's a slot-only guy. Right?
Yeah, it's been bad.
You know who it is? It's Malcolm Mitchell, who lasted for 1 year in 2016. That's the last guy that they had that could separate off of man coverage.
The last time they drafted a guy who could?
Sure, last time I drafted a guy, but even the last time they had a guy.
Well, Brandon Cooks and Edelman after that who could well separate.
All right, Brandon Cooks, sure. Okay, sure, yeah, Brandon Cooks. Okay, that's fine. That's fine. So Brandon Cooks in 2017, and I don't want to, not that I don't want to count Edelman. Edelman counts. But like, sure, the last time they drafted a guy that can separate on man coverage is Malcolm Mitchell. He lasted 1 year in 2016. And they won the Super Bowl because of him. But that's the point. Like, they don't have guys that can separate on man coverage. And they haven't had one for, even if you're saying Edelman, that's 5 years they haven't had a guy that can do that. And so just the fact that you get a guy that can do that day one, that's big for you. And so I think that he instantly improves now listen, are there question marks? Absolutely. He's getting drafted at 69. If he was that good, he'd be getting drafted at 14. Yeah. Right? And so like there are question marks, of course. But I do think that he brings the level of the offense up significantly, and that in the McDaniels system, he's going to be a good player. I have two numbers for you. Okay. Phil Perry, 17.1 yards per catch last season. Pretty good. Not too bad. Also, among the 96 wide receivers in the class with at least 60 targets, number one in yards after catch per reception, 8.4 yards after the catch per reception, which again, maybe he stacked that on bad teams. I don't know. But like either way, 8.4 yards after the catch per reception is outrageous, regardless of who you're playing.
Yeah. I agree with everything you said about receiver. I just think they grabbed the wrong one. And I get skittish here because this is the third time in the last 4 drafts that at some point on day 2 they've reached for a wide receiver. This is obviously not as big of a reach as it is for Polk or for Tyquan Thornton. I will say I didn't realize this. Arif Hassan updated his consensus board, adding some between, I think, Monday when it went live and the draft. When it initially launched, Kyle Williams was at, I believe, 91, and he moved up to 82 in like 3 days. So he was you're not getting about being a late riser there. So I actually had not realized that number had adjusted. So by the numbers, I thought it was a bigger reach at first than it actually was. But to me, the concern is this. Kyle Williams is a guy who's like seen as probably a 3rd round pick by consensus boards. Jalen Noel was seen as a second-round pick. They are very much in the same mold of player, and outside of run after catch, there's nothing I really like about Kyle Williams over Jalen Noel. Like Noel, to me, is much better deep threat, much better at tracking the ball, much better at contested catches. Um, I like him as a more consistent route runner, and he produced at a high level at a younger age in a better conference. We mentioned like Kyle Williams, his worst game this season was against Texas Tech. That's Big 12. That's what Jalen Noel was going at against week in, week out in college, and he actually had more yards this season, sharing production with Jaden Higgins than Kyle Williams had for Washington State. I just like Noel's tape better. I like the special team stuff that he can do. I think he's super, super tough. He's still good after the catch. And I guess one of the differences here is that Noel is probably a slot only, and Kyle Williams is someone who can play outside a little bit more. But we just did this last year where you're reaching on a receiver when you're focusing on style over ability to play. And I just think Noel's a significantly better prospect across the board for, like I said, a lot of reasons. So it's a reach when you look at, you can have a guy who is ranked the 57th overall prospect on the board, and instead you're taking a guy who's the 82nd overall prospect at the same position. And maybe they're getting it right on that. They did, I believe, the top 30 visits with both players. So it is conceivable that from those, they were kind of doing the head-to-head comparison and trying to figure out which one they like more, met both in person and came away with that. They also did that with N'Keal Harry and A.J. Brown back in 2019 and got that 100% wrong. That happens when you trust what happens in one limited visit over a much wider sample size. So I hope that they're getting it right here and that Williams is just a better guy here than Noel. I liked what Noel could do for this offense, and I liked the idea of him as a deep threat for what he could bring out in Drake May.
Right. And listen, I don't disagree with that. I like Jalen Noel quite a bit as well. Something about Kyle Williams spoke to me about the speed, and I think his speed's a little bit better than Noel's. But nevertheless, I will say there were two receivers picked between Kyle Williams and Jalen Noel. Isaac Teasla, which I love him, but I can't believe he went as high as he went. I love that kid. Yeah. But him going there is wild to me. But hey, another one of my guys. I'm happy about that. And Pat Bryant, which I don't know what the hell was going on with that pick. Why are you drafting Pat Bryant? That makes zero sense to me in the third round. I don't get it.
Well, Isaac Tesla and Pat Bryant going not just before Jalen Noel, but also Jalen Royals is still on the board. He has not been taken yet. Elick Iomanor is still on the board. Torrey Horton is still on the board. These are all guys that I would have ahead of Bryant and Tesla.
Yeah.
So I don't, and we see this all the time. Once you get past pick 40, receiver gets real weird. Weird for teams.
Well, and you feel like, this guy's a better fit for our system than that guy, and this guy can do this. And so, look, I think ultimately what it comes down to for me is the Patriots looked at it and thought, this guy fits our system better. And time will tell if they're right. Right? Time will tell if they're right.
This organization's history of looking at receivers and saying, we're going to take the guy who's rated lower because we like him better as a scheme fit over the guy who's rated higher is just horrendous.
Listen, you're not wrong. You're not wrong. The Titans with Mike Vrabel did a pretty good job of getting A.J. Brown when they got him. Now, again, he was a steal in that situation. They drafted him below his consensus as opposed to above his consensus. But nevertheless, he was a guy that was falling for whatever reason. They found him, they identified him, they drafted him. I think that's the only one really that he picked because I refuse to count the Arkansas kid because that was not his pick.
Traylon Burks. No, that situation was, I felt like the start of the undoing of the discord between Vrabel and the front office that led to
Yeah, I
everything.
agree. So anyway, so we'll see.
Yeah.
And I think you're not wrong to distrust them. I just think enough. So here's really my point, right? When you went against consensus before, right? Nobody agreed with you. When you took Tyquan Thornton, everyone's like, "What the hell are the Patriots doing?" Right? When you took N'Keal Harry, everyone was like, "What the hell are the Patriots doing?" When you took Aaron Dobson, people were like, "Ugh, I don't love that one." 2013, that was a long time ago. It wasn't the 24-hour news cycle like it is now, but people didn't love that pick back then. And I'm talking about national media wise. And listen, not that guys like Mike Renner are the end all be all, right? But when you see a guy like Mike Renner who says, hold on, I have it because I have it right here. I retweeted it. Kyle Williams is the best pure separator in the draft class. Couldn't love the pick more for Drake May. And like Mike Renner's not right about everything. No one's right about everything, right? But like that was the consensus across the board from everyone. We love Kyle Williams. Someone tweeted out like the worst kept secret in the NFL was that everyone loved Kyle Williams. Like he was a player that a lot of guys liked. And so my point, and listen, you had a higher grade on Jalen Noel, and Jalen Noel had a higher overall grade, right?
Yeah.
The consensus grade was higher. And so I understand your point. My thing is that I do believe that for whatever reason he was dinged to start. And and then he kind of crept back in. And so I love the pick. And I like what they're doing. Time will tell if they make the wrong pick. Well, then they made the wrong pick, right? I like what they're doing. They're getting a speed wide receiver for their quarterback. If they pick the wrong guy, well, then it was a failure, right? But like the fact that they're saying we have to get a speed running back and we have to get a speed wide receiver because we need to make our quarterback's life easier. Great. We have to get a left tackle to make our quarterback's life easier. They did those three things in their first three picks, and I love that. Our grade comes based on whether we think they got the right guy. You don't think they got the right guy in any of those. Well, maybe not in any of those three situations, but you don't think they got the right guy at left tackle or at wide receiver. And so your grade is lower than mine because I think they did get the right guy at left tackle and wide receiver. And so time will tell who's right, and maybe neither of us are right. Who knows?
Well, like last year they did this. Last year they went quarterback and then they went wide receiver, offensive line, wide receiver, and they prioritized getting those guys to pick with May, and those guys didn't
Yeah,
pan out.
but
In
those
2020,
guys. Yes,
in
but
2020,
we can't. Don't do that
it was
because it wasn't
it
even.
was their second, third, fourth round picks there that we're talking about. So we're talking about the same range of the draft. In 2022, they took after having Mac Jones for a year and needing to go. They did Tyquan Thornton and they did Pierre Strong and they did Kevin Harris, and that didn't work out. Like I think they've shown that this organization knows what positions they have to draft. Oh, Cole Strange too. It's just actually getting the good players there that has been a real struggle for them. And like I do think Trevion Henderson is going to be a good player. I'm not really concerned about that. I think from a value, I think they got that part right. I think he'll be good.
Right.
He's going to help you win football games. Whether that's a great long term thing, whether they're going to regret that compared to other people they could have taken, I think is the question. But like, Kyle Williams is just not like if they took Kyle Williams at pick, 106, I would have loved that. 77, I'm still totally cool with that. And if he was to pick at 69 and with Noel gone, I think I'm still okay with that. I just really have a hard time with this. By the way, the yards per reception, I was curious, so I pulled out that game against Portland State. When you pull that game against Portland State out, it comes down to 15.7, which is still pretty good. That's actually better than what Jalen Noel did on the season, which is still 14.9 yards per reception. So both very explosive players there.
Right.
Just Kyle Williams did it a little bit more with run after catch. Noel does a little bit more with downfield big plays. And I prefer the latter with a quarterback like Drake May, with what he can do with the football, with his deep accuracy, the ability to take, someone like Noel and like, all right, we can just have you run straight and May's going to drop it right in a bucket for you. And we're going to have a couple 50-yard touchdowns every season. I don't know if this is that type of player. So I do think he makes you better, but Yeah.
It's a fair point. It's a fair point. All right, let's take our second break, and then we'll
Oh,
get in.
one last point on this, because we
One
forgot
last
to mention where Noel did end up going in this.
Okay,
He goes to Houston.
yeah, to play with Jaden Higgins. So weird.
Texans got both Iowa State receivers, which two of those guys with Nico Collins, and then if Tank Dell ever does return to form, I really like that because Nico Collins is a traditional X, and Jaden Higgins to me is someone who can play, I think, as a complementary player outside the numbers or as a power slot type guy.
Mm.
And Noel can be your speed slot, or he could probably fill that old Philip Dorsett sacrificial verticals down the boundary type thing too. And having those two skill sets with guys who know how to play together already, to complement the guy who you already know is a legit number one wide receiver, I think that works really, really, really well.
Yeah, I mean it's a little strange, but I liked it. They also took what lineman did they take? They took a lineman that I really liked too.
They took Ursery.
Ursery, right? Because they're having more offensive line, so that helped them. But
I was shocked to see them take Jaden Higgins when they did with offensive linemen still on the board. That was risky.
Yeah, yes, it was. So
yes,
but we'll see. We'll see how it all pans out.
Yep.
All right, let's get into that. Let's get into that ad break.
Yep. All right. I'm here to talk to you guys about game time. NBA playoffs well underway. Unfortunately, Celtics not getting a win tonight, but the loss means that we're guaranteed a game 5 in the series. The Celtics will return back home to Boston. If you want to go to that one, potentially see a first round series clinching game at the TD Garden. Game Time is going to make that faster and easier than ever with prices that actually go down the closer it gets to tip off with killer last minute deals, all in prices, views from your seat, and the lowest price guarantee. Game Time takes the guesswork out of buying NBA playoff tickets. They've got last minute tickets and zone deals. It's going to be easy to find, whatever tickets you're looking for. I love it because you can hit that Game Time Picks button and the all-in pricing button. It's going to filter out the fluff for you, and the prices you see are the prices you're going to pay. So right off the bat, when you click into a game or any other event that you're trying to go to, it's going to make that really simple for you. It's going to pull out all the tickets you were never going to think about buying anyway. And then when you're trying to figure out where you want to sit, it's going to show you the view from that section so you know what you're getting yourself into. And with last minute deals, you can save up to 60% off buying last minute for sports or concerts or comedy or theater. They do it all at Game Time. So I've used it a lot. I highly recommend it. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code CLNS for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code CLNS for $20 off. Download the Game Time app today. Last minute tickets, lowest price, guaranteed.
All right. We did tell my daughter yesterday for her birthday that she's going to. I bought tickets to Stray Kids at City Park. So a little K-pop. They have a little K-pop. It's at City Park. So or City Field, I guess. Which I guess it'll be fun. I don't know. I don't like the music, but what am I gonna do? I gotta take her. So
it's still live music. You'll have a good time.
Yeah, it'll be fine. It'll be fine, and they'll be having a ton of fun. So my son's coming with us, and they'll have a ton of fun together. So yeah, that'll be good. All right, let's get into our last pick, which we both love. We're going to agree on this one, which is nice. Yes. Kind of nice. So the Patriots traded back twice. They started 77. They moved from 77 to 85, and in that deal, they pick 146. Now, I didn't love the trade back because I liked the players that were on the board. I thought they could go defense. An interesting thing is that I actually really wanted them to take Shavon Revel. He goes pick 76 to Dallas, and so he's not available at 77. The Patriots move back. Now, I don't know if they were interested in taking him or not, but it was just an interesting thing that he went 76 and the Patriots move out of 77.
Do you know who was still on the board at 77, by the way?
Who's that?
Jalen Noel.
Jalen Noel. Oh, boy. So, yes, they did. So they did move back. So they go back to 85. They pick up 146. Then they went back another 10 picks again, this time with the Chiefs. They pick up a 2026 4th-round pick. Right? 4th-round pick? Yeah, 2026 4th-round pick. To do so, they go back 10 picks, and then they end up at 95. And so at 95, they draft Jared Wilson, the center from Georgia. And Wilson is a guy that is the exact opposite of what we just talked about. He was 73rd on Arif Hassan's consensus pick board, 82nd on the Athletic. He's a guy that he's a 1-year starter, right? Mm-hmm. But my goodness, he brings like the RAS score was like insane. He brings some real speed and athleticism to the position, and I think that that's something that they can really use. Elliot Wolf did mention in his press conference that there is a chance that he has some position flexibility, that maybe Garrett Bradbury is your starting center this year and Jared Wilson is your starting left guard this year. So I thought that was interesting. Now, that might just be smoke because they want to take Marcus Bowe at 104 or 106, and they don't want anyone to know that. And so they're, just kind of pretending that, no, we're not going to take him anywhere. So, we'll see if that remains to be seen if they draft a guard in the next few picks. But at least conceivably, he's a guy that has position flexibility as well. And I couldn't love this pick anymore. This is really, you're talking about continuing to build the offense around Drake May. That starts with protection. And so Jared Wilson, love it.
Yeah, this is fantastic. And I think one of the things here, first with centers, I think that's probably your least important spot on the line when it comes to pass protection. It's important for setting protections, but in this system, the quarterback's going to do that. So then it's, you just have to not be a liability in pass protection. If they're going to put a big defensive tackle there, you got to be able to hold your own. But a lot of the center job is going to be helping out with the guards, right. Helping out in a double team and doing the mental stuff. Consequently, what that means, more important as a run blocker, especially you're playing against teams that are going to have 2 defensive tackles. Those defensive tackles are probably going to be over the guards, which means that you can be used. You're either going to have to reach block. So you're going to have to, what that means is get in front of a defensive tackle who has a head start to you in the direction you're trying to run the football. So you got to have a center who's mobile for that.
Hardest block in football, by the way. For those of us that haven't tried it before, the hardest block in football.
Yeah. Or as a center, you're going to be used as a puller to get out in front of runs and be a lead blocker. And with his athleticism and I mentioned his soft feet because he played soccer growing up, he's the perfect athlete for that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And I think in some ways, he's still not a young player, but inexperienced player, still raw, still room to be developed there. But as an athlete, he gives you such a high ceiling to be used as an actual weapon in the running game. Mm-hmm. And that's something where he and Will Campbell, I think, are very interesting here as linemen, is they're very mobile players who I think can be used both as pullers in the run game, and having multiple guys like that, I think, gives you some real fun scheme options to do stuff. And, I think depending on exactly how raw he is when he gets to the NFL level and how he adjusts, you've got, if you want to keep him at center, you can let him learn behind a real experienced, savvy vet in Garrett Bradbury and be ready to play when he's ready. Or he just steps in and is your starter week 1 and just takes the reins. And then I think that's very real. And also, the fact that a guy like this, he can be a really good center who can build chemistry with Drake May. Mm-hmm. And in theory, you can lock that in, and Drake May might basically only play with one center for the next 10 years. And that is really nice for the stability of your line. If Will Campbell is somebody who will be a starter for you for the next 10 years, which you're hoping, even if it isn't at left tackle, if it's at another spot, and you can be a center who can form that relationship with your quarterback, mm-hmm. that's really good for building a foundation going into the future. So, very, very excited for this one. I think this is a great pick.
Yeah, and ultimately what it comes down to is that you're trying to continue to build the offensive line, and whether he plays center or guard is irrelevant. It doesn't matter, right? You sign Garrett Bradbury to a fairly small contract, so you can get out of it if you need to, if he wins that job out of camp and he's your starting center. If he isn't your starting center and he ends up being your, you know, your left guard, well, great. Now your offensive line's done, right? I don't think they'll approach it that way. I do think that they'll take a guy, they'll take a guard, at least one. I think maybe even two, but I think that they'll take a guard at some point in the draft again, because I think that ideally you'd want Wilson to stay at center, right? Like the athleticism becomes less valuable if he moves to guard because he's not the strongest guy. Right? He only did 23 reps, I think, on the bench. He's not the strongest guy. He's more agile than he is strong. And that's a good thing for your center. It's not necessarily a good thing for your guard, right? Because those D tackles are lining up on top of the guards, right? And so, especially if you're running power and duo and things like that, like that's, you know, ISO, whatever, like you're asking that guy to go one-on-one against some big beast. And, you know, can he do it? Can he not? We'll see. But so I think you lose some of the athleticism pluses if he moves to guard. But, you know, he can pull and everything else still. So, but anyways, I think that the Patriots should and will address guard again later on. But he's a guy that has a little bit, at least, of position flexibility. But again, like you said, like this is what you want. You want to get guys that are going to make Drake May better and make his life easier. And that's exactly what you're getting here.
Well, I think you're also at a spot here for this season. I think you feel good about the line because, you know, you've drafted Will Campbell, assuming he's going to be your starting left tackle for the whole season. So, right. In theory, that position is set. But between Bradbury and Wilson, you should have addressed all your center reps for the season.
Mm-hmm.
On when it was going to be your right guard, Morgan Moses is going to be your right tackle. You're set 4 spots on the line now, you think. And the only other spot's left guard. You can draft a guard if you like one. If you go in and it's going to be Cole Strange and Layden Robinson battling, and they also signed Wes Schweitzer, and maybe he figures into a positional battle here somewhere if guys are hurt or if guys don't perform as well as you're hoping on the interior. I think you have a high enough floor with those guys, and if Will Campbell plays as well as you're hoping, and Jared Wilson, you know, this is decently high for a center, so your expectations should be pretty high year one for him to at least get on the field and play at an average NFL level. If you only have one spot on the line that's a real question mark, I think you're okay with that. Yeah. And you let the guys duke it out, and if by the end of the season, Layden Robinson isn't who you want, Cole Strange isn't the guy who's going to get re-signed, you can find a left guard somewhere in free agency or in the draft next year and try to address that then. I wouldn't be too concerned about that. And, you know, then you go in. There's also the possibility that Will Campbell ends up being your left guard. But yeah, that would be your solution. And then you just go into the draft needing a right tackle because Morgan Moses is getting older, and you kick that can down the road, but it'll have to be addressed at some point. And maybe one other depth spot on the line. So down to draft guard here at some point for the rest of the draft. If they don't take it, I think that's totally fine. I think you've put yourself in a good spot where, you know, you got a third rounder here at center. You've got veteran in Bradbury. You got a great guy. Layden Robinson was 4th round last year at left guard. You've got Cole Strange, who's a 1st round pick, who will be center or left guard. Jake Andrews was a 4th round pick back in the day, who's still there at center. You got enough guys with some kind of pedigree there that I think you can figure something out for a year and then reevaluate after that season.
Yeah, no, I think you're right. And that's, I mean, we'll see, right? I guess we'll see. That's what it comes down to, right? Is that ultimately we'll see what they decide to do. But I'm with you in the fact that they have some good players there. And you can feel good about where you're at, or at least pretty good about where you're at. I do think that they need to potentially bring in someone else. I don't know who that is, but you know, again, it's interesting to hear Wolf come out immediately and say, yeah, he's got some position flexibility. He might play guard. That kind of says to me like, oh, he might be playing left guard for the Patriots this year. And maybe he moves over to center next year. Or maybe he turns out to be a really good guard and stays there. I don't know. But, at the very least, I think that, you're looking at a guy that that at least could be helping out your team. And so I'm happy about it. Again, it's one of those things where you need a guy and you get a player that we think could be a solid player and really could be a starter on day one. I'd actually be pretty surprised if Jared Wilson wasn't a starter day one.
Yeah. A top 100 center, those guys typically play. If they're not the starters day one, they're going to play pretty quickly. So.
And even if he's a guard, even if they see him as a guard instead of a center, a top 100 guard you would assume is going to be starting day one as well. So
when I think you look at this whole draft as we go back to the whole draft so far.
Yeah,
Will Campbell. If he's not a starter week one, something's gone very seriously.
Jesus Christ. Yeah.
Yeah. Trevion Henderson, like I said, you're not drafting a running back in that spot if you feel very good about Ramondre Stevenson here either.
I agree.
Which, to be fair, is something I think we've both hammered home this whole time, that running back is a need. I just didn't think it was that should have been addressed this high with other guys on the board. But very real chance that Henderson's just your top back week one.
Right.
And if not your top back, maybe you're number two. And then Kyle Williams. They like him this much. After Stephon Diggs, all the wide receiver reps are going to be wide open, assuming Diggs is ready to go week one. And the guys he's fighting, I like him more than Kendrick Bourne at this point, with where Bourne is in his career. I think, he's probably going to be fighting. Like, I wouldn't be surprised if it's going to be Mac Hollins as the X, take some of that, and then Diggs, and then Pop and Kyle Williams fighting for that next spot, and then Jared Wilson starting. Like, you might have 4 rookie starters on offense, and then you're also adding to that, Layden Robinson, maybe a starter here, and as a second-year guy, and Drake May is a second-year guy. You're getting younger. And, like, I said I was going to touch on this. There's, I think, some comparisons to be made to the 2022 draft. The 2022 draft, you start by drafting a very athletic lineman, and then you go for team speed after that. And they had Tyquan Thornton, they had Pierre Strong. Obviously, those picks did not work out.
Right.
Seems like a similar approach here. You draft a fast wide receiver, overdrafting him a little bit. You've got a fast running back. Henderson has a lot, better prospect and a lot more pedigree than Pierre Strong had. Those guys are in entirely different tiers as prospects.
Right.
But a generally similar approach with Elliot Wolf, Matt Groh, also still in the building. So if this draft doesn't pan out, there should be a lot of questions to be asked here. Because,
if this draft doesn't pan out, Elliot Wolf and Matt Groh have to go. It's just that simple. It's really that simple, because you can't do the same thing. And I push back on the fact that it's similar to 2022 because the prospects are so significantly better than they were. I mean, you have Sean McVay laughing at the Patriots for taking Cole Strange at 29, right? Just literally laughing. And, at the time I was like, oh, okay, maybe he could be, and he's shown flashes of being okay. He can stay on the field. And so, he was a small school guy who was coming up to the NFL. The question was, could he make the jump? And he didn't. Mm-hmm. Right. And whether that's because his body isn't, can't handle or what, it doesn't matter. He hasn't been able to do it. Tyquan Thornton was a 6th-round pick grade. He was a 6th-round pick that they drafted in the 2nd round. So that's not even close to Kyle Williams. That's not even the same stratosphere of player as Kyle Williams was.
I do want to add one thing on this. One of the reasons Tyquan Thornton went way higher, supposedly, was because his meeting went really well and he impressed them with his mental side. And if we look back next December and we're like, man, we should have taken Noel instead of Kyle Williams, it really seems like the meeting and the mental side were the difference makers here.
And that's a fair point. But again, you're talking about a 3rd-round grade as opposed to a 6th-round grade. It's a significantly different player.
Yeah, in very different tiers of prospect, different tiers of reaches here. Kyle Williams is someone who really, 13 spots isn't really even a reach at that point in the draft. It's really only feels like a reach given the other receivers on the board, which I think it's also worth mentioning. Savion Williams was in that group of guys that they could have taken.
Mm-hmm.
I would take Kyle Williams over Savion Williams. I'm just not. Savion Williams is like the new Cordero Patterson.
Right.
That's okay. And then there was one other receiver who was in that gap. Oh, Jalen Royals.
I was just say Jalen Royals.
Oh, Jalen Royals and Elik Ayamenor.
Right.
Like
I like Royals. I like
Royals. I like Royals more than I would go Noel, Royals, Williams myself. Ayamenor. Yeah. I like Kyle Williams more than him. I don't like the way he can't separate, but Noel and Royals to me are, even though Kyle Williams has the big, what do you call it, yards per catch number, I actually like Royals and Noel better as big play guys for translating to the NFL.
Yeah, which again, maybe you're right. And so that remains to be seen. But nevertheless, my point here is that when you look at the players that they drafted and the consensus, right? After the 2022 draft, we looked at the Patriots and said, what the hell are they doing? What are they thinking? And they better be right here with, Cole Strange and Tyquan Thornton and Pierre Strong and Kevin Harris and all these guys that nobody liked these guys, but the Patriots did. So they better be right. And turns out they were completely wrong. Yeah. And it's one of the reasons that Bill Belichick was fired after the 2023 season, because they had nothing. They had nobody. And the hard thing to know is, how much of it was Belichick and how much of it was, was Elliott Wolf. And we don't know. We don't have an answer to that question, right? And so all we can do is look. Now, again, in 2023, you don't feel good about the decision-making with Jalen Polk and Ladd McConkey. Now, I don't think that Noel is the caliber of player that Ladd McConkey is. As a matter of fact, I would argue that Kyle Williams is more in. Kyle Williams had a similar trajectory to Ladd McConkey in the pre-draft process. Maybe Jack Besh, but in the fact that it's a player that was overlooked, that people were like, this guy stinks. And people just kind of kept saying, I don't know why you're overlooking him. He's a good player. Now, of course, he ended up getting drafted a round later, but went to the Senior Bowl, looked really good at the Senior Bowl, and started rising up draft boards. And I think maybe Jack Besh is a better comp to that. I don't think Jack Besh is nearly as explosive as that, but I think that Besh is a really good example of a player that really wasn't getting a ton of love until he went to the Senior Bowl, which is really what happened to Ladd McConkey last year, where he wasn't getting a ton of love, went to the Senior Bowl, and guys were like, "Whoa, this guy's really good. We should probably draft this guy early," right? And so, and I feel like something similar happened with Kyle Williams this year, and so that's just my read on it. And again, I don't know, but this is the way I feel about it. What makes me feel better about the guy? It's not a combine thing. It's not a workout thing. It's not he just runs fast. Even Travion Henderson, he just doesn't just run fast. He does everything well.
Yeah, he's just good at being a running back.
And that's the thing. Pierre Strong was fast, but he couldn't actually be a running back, right? And so that kind of defeats the purpose of being fast. Who cares if you're fast if you can't run the ball? And so I do feel significantly better about this draft class than I did in 2022. But again, it's those were all very high risk picks.
Yes.
And we can classify the Will Campbell pick as a high risk pick. I think we've seen the production for the last 3 years. And I think that production should kind of speak for itself a little bit, but there's some risk there. There's always risk no matter what you're doing, obviously. But, I think that they're taking lower risk on these picks than they were in 2022. And I think that there's a significantly better chance that all four of these guys pan out than in 2022. And by the way, just based on statistics, it's unlikely that all four of these guys will pan out. One of them's probably going to flame out and not be very good, just because that's usually how it works. You usually don't hit on all your draft picks. And so, we'll see. That remains to be seen, of course. But I do think that they're in a significantly better situation than they were in 2022.
Yeah, and I feel better. I feel good about this draft. Like, it's weird. I do not agree with most of the decisions that the team made when they were on the clock. I also think the players they got are generally pretty good and make the team better. And like,
right,
if you take away the context of how the players got here, I feel pretty good about the draft class. So like, I'm excited to see these guys in camp.
Right. Well, that's the funny thing. Someone even said it too, and I don't mean to cut you off, but someone said it like, if you had told me going into day 2 that we would have walked away with Travion Henderson, Kyle Williams, and Jared Wilson, I would have been pumped. I'd been like, this is great. Awesome. We got 3 really good players. And, then it depends on now, okay, well, the board looks the way it does, and we could have had this guy and we could have had that guy, and there was a situation where this guy could have been available, whatever. And so maybe the actual acquisition of the players may not have been what you wanted, but getting the guy is, when you look back at the totality of the draft, you say, ooh, I like these guys. This is good, Yeah.
And I wouldn't hate, like, if it came down to Henderson or Mason Taylor, I'd feel a lot better about it because I think that's a much closer thing. It's just the fact that you've got Burden and Scorton on the board at the same time. You're passing on both of those guys. And even I get the argument with Scorton. With Burden. Scorton to me was just like, I was looking back at my grades. I had him a hair below Will Campbell for my grade, which part of that is I was lower on Will Campbell than others, but I was very close
Not
to
that
two of
much
those
lower.
guys. Yeah, I was very close on the 2 of those, and I was like, all right, like if we end up with both of those players, I think we probably got 2 first-round pieces on the line of scrimmage, which is an area this team needs to get a lot better at. So hopefully Henderson ends up being really good. It's what that pick reminds me of a little bit is the Damian Harris pick when the Pats added him.
In the third round, right?
I think. So it was later on in the draft. But at that point, they still had good running back. It was very much, okay, so you just thought he was the best player. Like, you did. This wasn't a position of need. You just thought he was the best player on your board. And I don't hate that approach. I just don't love that approach with the other needs on the team. And that's Should we what do you call it? Should we spend a minute here to talk about non-Patriots things in this?
Yeah. I think the first thing we got to talk about is Shedeur Sanders. And I know Shedeur Sanders is dominating conversation with everyone. I don't know what's going on, right? I had said all along I didn't think Shedeur Sanders was a first-round pick. I certainly didn't think Shedeur Sanders was a top 5 pick. But you're talking about taking 26-year-old Tyler Show, or Shao, however the hell you say it.
It's Shuck, actually.
Shuck. Perfect.
Yeah.
26-year-old Tyler Shuck. Yuck. That's perfect. Rhymes with yuck. 26-year-old Tyler Yuck and Dylan freaking Gabriel over Shedeur Sanders. Like, are you kidding me? And listen, like, maybe there's some sort of thing where teams didn't like it or teams didn't like Dion or I don't know. But my God, football-wise, it makes 0 sense. Like, less than 0 cents. I don't get it. I don't get it.
I actually gotta disagree. So this is a friend of the show, Jordan Lauby, who also does his own stuff. He and I sat down and decided we wanted to watch quarterbacks together 2 months ago. So we took a Saturday. We watched Cam Ward, and then we immediately followed that up by watching Shedeur. And what basically followed was an hour and a half, 2 hours of stunned silence that we could not believe what we were watching, and we could not believe that this guy was being considered in any way for a first-round pick. I felt like I was watching a slightly souped-up Bailey Zappi at times, to be quite honest with you. A guy who was not athletic enough to do the things he was trying to do and, like, not processing well. And I thought the tape was very bad. And it's, very bad by first-round pick standards. I said
Right.
third round pick is what I thought the tape looked like to me. Well, if you're a third round pick and you add in a little quarterback bump, that gets you to the second. But the problem is that if then your interviews are horrendous, which it sounds like they were, this is
Right.
something that started to be reported earlier this week. All right, well, if you are a mid-tier, or late day 2, early day 3 level quarterback prospect, and you're a personality problem, where do you fit on a team? Because
Fair point.
like it's always going to be a media circus. It's always going to be an issue, and I think there's like just from the outside, if I was a team, I'd be very concerned about him buying into a backup job. It sounds like he didn't take the interview process very seriously. They were talking, I think, on ESPN or NFL Network, I don't remember which, that he doesn't even have an agent. Sounds like he was blowing off teams in interviews. So, like,
Yeah.
and once with a quarterback prospect in general, once you have gone a full rotation through all the teams, and everyone has said, that means that every single team in the NFL has looked at you and said, we don't really think you're starter material. Once that evaluation has been made, there is no floor on it. There's no limit to how far you can drop. So, like, I think he probably just goes at the top of the 4th here. But if he's got personality issues, you're not confident he can buy it into a backup job, and you have questions about his ceiling. Like, if we're talking about a guy whose ceiling is the 20th best quarterback in the NFL, and he brings a media circus, and you can't trust him to be a backup, who's signing up for that?
Yeah, and that's a fair point. That's a fair point.
I feel bad for him because if his name wasn't Sanders and there wasn't all of this everything else around him, he goes in the 3rd round. And we're talking about him as, a developmental quarterback who can play point guard in the right offense. And, it's a different world, but he's pushed into this one. And
yeah, it's not good. It's not good. And you're not necessarily
Dylan Gabriel was the first one that made me go, oh boy, this is bad. Because like even with the other ones, like Shuck had good tape. Shuck had better tape than Shedeur Sanders had. There's obviously a lot of factors, but he had better tape.
Right.
Jalen Milroe did not have better tape. He had clearly better athleticism. Okay.
Right.
Like, those make sense. Even Jackson,
yes,
better athletic. Like, I get it. I get why someone would like you more. When you get to Dylan Gabriel, that is a 100% we do not trust your personality pick. Because Dylan Gabriel's ceiling is probably high quality backup.
Right. Well, and that's I don't understand it. I don't get it. I just don't get it. I don't get it. So again,
I just don't think Shedeur's that good.
And by the way, I feel the same way. I'm not a huge Shedeur Sanders fan or anything like that. I just think it's a little foolish that he's here. But I don't know. The Jets, like you mentioned, Mason Taylor, the Jets have actually have been doing things pretty good.
I hate it, man.
I love it. Don't like it. Don't like it.
You're not supposed to be a functional NFL team. You're supposed to be a comedy troupe.
That's correct.
So that's not. I don't like that the Jets are doing good things. Scrolling through here, trying to see. I did not think Carson Schlesinger was going to go as early as he did to the Browns.
By the way, one of the guys on my list. I had 6 guys on my list, and 4 of them went very early in the second round. Actually, that's not true. 3 of them went early in the second round, and 1 of them went in the 3rd round, at the top of the 3rd round. And then the one guy that's left on the list is Jalen Royals. But yeah, I had Isaac Teasla, Carson Schlesinger, Jaden Higgins, Benjamin Morrison, and Siobhan Revel, who went in the top of the 3rd round. And Jalen Roy is the last guy on that list. But I love Schlesinger. I thought he could be a great fit for the Patriots. I actually thought he could be a great fit for the Patriots at 38. I still thought that would have been a little too high for him, but But I just love what he brings to the team.
He's a fun player. If they drafted Schlesinger, I would have had a similar reaction to my trivia on Henderson one. To be quite honest with you,
Yeah,
I like
which I get.
He'll be a good player, but like,
Yeah,
man,
which I understand.
yeah. So just scrolling through some other picks that caught my interest. Nick Eamon to the Seahawks.
Trade up.
An athlete like that with that coaching and that defense is very intriguing to
I
me.
agree.
With how that coach used Kyle Hamilton before. I'm curious on that. Caught my attention that the Dolphins traded up for Savania and jumped the Patriots to do it, and that the Bills traded up for TJ Sanders. One, I'd like to know why the Dolphins felt like they needed to jump people like that for Savania. The teams they jumped, I don't think we're going to take him.
Unless they thought the Patriots were going to go guard, which they could.
Yeah, that was yeah. And then TJ Sanders, I like TJ Sanders. I don't like TJ Sanders at 41, so they get a bit of a reach for Bills. And then one other one that caught my attention when it happened was Terrence Ferguson at 46 to the Rams. Massive reach. But
this happens every year, man, with tight ends. Every year.
But what intrigues me about this, the Rams are one of the teams that's been on the forefront of using chip data to measure players. So tracking what you do in games instead of using your measurements at the combine. And Ferguson is a guy who I think was very athletic. And I saw this. My first thought was, with what the Rams have done in the past, there might be something in that tracking data for his athleticism and the way he played for Oregon last year that tells them this guy's better than everyone else thinks. And they could be totally wrong on that. They're reaching big time, so they probably are wrong.
Yeah.
But I'm looking at that, and that makes me go, because Ferguson's a guy I liked. Not this much, but I thought that was interesting.
Yeah. I thought Arizona has done a great job. Jordan Birch, I thought, was a little bit of a reach, but getting Will Johnson when they did at 47, I thought was awesome. I know he obviously has concerns, clearly. Like, they get serious medical issues. But the fact that you add Walter Nolan at 16 and then you get Will Johnson, like a consensus top 20 pick at 47, I think is great. And then you get an edge guy, in the third round. I thought was really solid by them. And they had things that they had to do, and they did it, which was good. Yeah. Carolina today, Nick Squirtin, we mentioned already. They got Princely, Umana, I think, from Ole Miss, which again I think is a solid pick. You need more edge rushers, and to add both of those guys, I thought was helpful. So I liked what they did quite a bit. And then the Cowboys. We talked about Azarico going there at 44, and then they take Siobhan Revel at 76 after taking Tyler Booker. And Tyler Booker was a little bit of a reach, but and it seems like kind of dumb, but I feel like the Cowboys were going to do something stupid, and instead of doing something stupid, they were like, you know what? We really need a guard. Let's just draft a guy that we know is going to be a good player instead of reaching and doing something stupid. And so, it was a reach. I don't love taking a guard at 12, but if he slots in right away and plays really good and is like a Pro Bowler, okay, it was better than what dumb mistake they probably would have done it at 12 instead.
Yeah. No, that's definitely fair.
So,
a couple other picks. Tate Ratledge to Detroit.
Yeah,
I loved a lot. That's a great fit.
Yep.
Maybe my favorite fit of the second round is Andrew Makuba to the Eagles.
Mm-hmm.
In that, oh my, that makes so much sense.
Yeah.
Harold Fannin to the Browns. I actually like that fit. Is any others?
No, I don't think Teasla. Like I said, I love Teasla so much, anyways, and him going to Detroit is really fun because you're just adding another tall, fast guy that can just run by people.
I am a little bit concerned that could be the Lions getting a little high on their own supply.
Yeah, certainly could be.
Broncos, you reach on Harvey and you reach on Pat Bryant.
Yeah, it's a little strange. I didn't love that.
They drafted 2 4th-rounders in the second and third round, so I don't really like that. That fits with what they've done before. They like to reach.
Xavier Watts. I don't know how Xavier Watts lasted all the way to 96. I just don't know how it happened.
think there's injury stuff there.
Maybe.
Yeah. Dylan Fairchild to the Bengals. I like that.
Mhm.
Oh, I don't know what I was going to mention. We talked about and maybe you did say this before, but the Patriots trading back. When they traded back the second time, they traded back right after Jacob Parrish came off the board. That was someone
Yes.
that you had liked.
Yep.
I don't know if you said that, but
Yeah,
they
that
may
was
have been targeting him when traded back.
well, and that was a situation where I don't know if Revel fits with them super well, but Revel got taken by the Cowboys at 76. They traded back from 77 to 85. Then at 84, Parrish gets picked by Tampa. They move out at 85 to 95. And so I don't know if they were in on Revel. I do think they were in on Parrish for 85, and they just said, screw it, we're moving back again.
Yeah. And they got
we'll take it. So
they got value in both trade backs. So I like
they
that.
did. Yeah.
Yeah. Wyatt Milam to the Jags. I like that. Emory Jones to the Ravens is very interesting to me. I like Jalen Milrow to the Seahawks. That's going to be. I'm curious about that.
That's a fun pick. Yeah.
Yeah. Jalen Smith to the Texans at 97. That is high for Jalen Smith.
Yeah. But
he was a 7th rounder to me, and you took him in the top 100. That is a lot.
Yeah, it's not great. It's not great.
Yeah.
So, all right, what do you? We got to get the heck out of here. We're 90 minutes in. It's 1:00 in the morning. We get the hell out of here. What are you looking for tomorrow?
I'm gonna look at the board and see who's left here. Yeah, there's not necessarily specific positions I feel like they need to hit. So I don't think you're necessarily like I like an edge rusher. So like Braden Swinson, be cool. And Jack Sawyer make a lot of sense.
Yeah.
I don't really like Jack Sawyer, so I would hope that doesn't happen. I don't think they're going to go for another running back. I don't think they're going to go for another wide receiver. I think those positions are gone. And I don't think they're going to. Maybe they take a tight like Gunnar Helm at 106 could be interesting to me. Dan Walker, if they feel good about him at defensive tackle, is interesting. Joshua Farmer, I think, is interesting. Yeah, but I would just kind of try to go best player available the rest of the way. I think you filled most of the need, so just go for guys you think are talented.
Well, there you go. All right. Here's my mock draft I'm working on for Burned, for Pat's Pulpit for tomorrow. So for those of you that are still listening, you catching us a little sneak peek of it. 106, I'm going Joshua Farmer, Florida State, D tackle. 144, I don't know if he's going to last this long because tight ends, people get crazy with tight ends, but I'm going Thomas Fidone, I believe, from Nebraska, who is rated super low, but like has the athleticism, I think, that people might like. Not sure. 146, I'm going David Walker from Central Arkansas, an edge. 171, Jordan Hancock from Ohio State. 220, Thomas Perry, who we talked about on the show last week. And then 238, Andres Borregales from Miami. So adding another offensive lineman, adding another tight end, and then also adding 3 defensive players as well before you add a kicker. I think it's reasonable to assume they're going to draft a kicker. They've been in on kickers. They've done a ton of visits with kickers. Maybe they'll sign one instead, but I just think it's reasonable to assume they'll draft one. So I'm throwing him in the last pick. It might be a 5th round pick, but I'm putting him in the last pick because I can't do anything before a 7th round pick. I just can't do it. Can't bring myself to do it in the mock draft.
Yeah, and I wouldn't. Yeah, I'm right there with you. The other thing I think I'd look here for if you're in New England, if you can trade into next year's draft, I would do that because I just like guys are going to be coming out. So if you can, if somebody gets desperate, you can flip one of these 5ths for a 4th next year.
Yeah. Then now you're looking at 3 4th round picks next year already, which is nice. You know?
Which is also that gets useful for not just drafting players but making trades during the season. If you're better than you think you are and you want to make a move at the deadline, having a couple extra day 2, day 3 picks is useful for adding some players.
I agree. All right, let's get the heck out of here. Everyone, thank you so much for joining in. We appreciate it. The chat was going for a little while. We appreciate that. Shout out to my guys, Shavs and Torres, who I don't know if you're still watching, but I know you were watching for a bit, so I appreciate that. And for everyone that was here watching and commenting, we appreciate you. Thank you for coming out. just a quick programming note for us. We will not have a show tomorrow night. Matt has something going on. I have something going on. And so we're not around tomorrow night. Sunday night, we will do a full draft recap. Obviously recapping the third round, but then recapping the rest of the draft as well. And then we're hoping to have a full draft recap with a guest later on in the week. So we'll see what day that is, but later on in the week. So anyways, that's what we got. Thank you. Enjoy tomorrow. Have fun in rounds 4 through 7. It's always fun. That's a fun day as well. So enjoy it. Be good to each other and go Pats.